Thank you to the choir and their conductor, Professor Christine Howlett, for their beautiful choral prelude to today's convocation. As we begin this convocation, which in its root means calling together, I want to take the time to acknowledge the Wappingers, the Stockbridge-Munsee Band of Mohican, the Delaware Lenape tribe, and the Delaware Nation, the many indigenous peoples of these lands, as well as their descendants who are still here today and on whose land we gratefully gather.
Thank you, Reverend Spears, for that land acknowledgement. Members of the faculty, students, administrators, staff, Reverend Spears, Professor Leonard, VSA President Parikh, and President Bradley, welcome and good afternoon. A special welcome also to the outstanding classes of 2021 and 2024. I'm excited to virtually convene this wonderful group of peers, students, staff, and administrators, and faculty. Typically, we would have gathered in the chapel as a community to celebrate Convocation, which marks the beginning of the academic year, and in its current form dates back over a century to 1914. Convocation is a special occasion because it's perhaps the only institutional tradition where we ask seniors and first-year students to hold space with one another as we simultaneously celebrate both. Convocation embodies institutional memory in ways that it asks seniors, in the presence of their new first-year colleagues, to reflect back on their own time and history at the college. The practice and ritual of reflection are similar for first years as we bring to a close the excitement and work of your week-long orientation week at the college. As we start the year together, I hope we'll take time to remember to seek balance in our own lives and go for extended or even better, unexpected walks on our beautiful campus. Let us work together with one another as we show the world what a caring, challenging, and happy residential community is and can be. Let us be a community that accepts the scientific value of physical distancing, but rejects the implication that it means we must be socially distant from one another. Most importantly, let's remember to work together and show one another that we precedes me. Welcome and best of luck as we begin another chapter in the transformation of ourselves and this special place. And now I would like to introduce Vassar's President, Elizabeth Bradley. President Bradley?
Welcome, everyone. I am excited and energized to be among this amazing group of human beings. Wherever we are, from on campus to remote locations, we have an unprecedented opportunity to put our collective talent to use. And I have every confidence in our potential to meet this moment with courage, with integrity, and with care. Convocation is a tradition at Vassar that began in 1865. In those early days, Convocation was a sermon given by the first president, President Raymond, yes, after whom Raymond House is named, to open the academic year. Not to worry, the tradition is no longer, and I have no intention of giving a sermon. By 1914, Convocation had expanded to be a parade of faculty and students in full regalia, and I thank Professor Uffett for helping us to reenact this important ritual. Every convocation has been held in this very chapel since it was erected in 1904, except in the 1960s when the ceremony was held in the outdoor theater, and of course, except now, when the ceremony is held on the internet due to the pandemic. Although our setting is certainly unique, you join the long academic tradition common to all Vassar students of being called together. In August, I had 2 weeks of vacation, and I'm a bit of a voracious reader, so I read 3 remarkable books during that time. I'm also interested in just about everything, like people with a liberal arts education tend to be. So although these books may seem unrelated, to me, they're very much of an area. The books were Stamped from the Beginning by Ibram Kendi, Epidemics and Society by Frank Snowden, and Rigged by David Scheimer. The first is a history of racism, basically from the story of Noah's Ark to present day. The book is a tour de force. It was #1 on the New York Times bestseller list and was awarded the National Book Award for nonfiction for outstanding literary work by a U.S. citizen. The second book was an anthology of epidemics through the years, beginning with the bubonic plague, the disease that spread by fleas that caused Black Death and killed 50 million people in Asia, Africa, and Europe in the 14th century. That was between 25% and 60% of European population at that time. And the book ended all the way up to Ebola and SARS. And last, Rigged, the story of covert electoral interference over the last century, with focus on the history and current day efforts by both the US and Russia to influence elections. The book ends with the election of President Trump in 2016 and reports primary source data on Russian influence on the hearts and minds of US citizens, if not exact vote counts. A major insight from the book is that the racial and economic splits in the US make this country extremely vulnerable to outside influence over federal elections, the cornerstone of our democratic model of governance. What do these have in common, you might wonder? Well, for me, they all delve into our collective struggle in the US and globally, and our poor navigation of our relationship with the other, people who we perceive to be not like us, whether that not like us is due to race, ethnicity, geographical background, social and economic status, or disease status. Why do we design categories and then put people in them? Well, organizational theorists and researchers have proposed that using such categories can be adaptive. Classifying people might feel like it simplifies. It makes sense out of a complicated world. Or another reason is classifying and categorizing people into roles helps us organize work to be productive and efficient in some way. And further, putting people in categories may reduce our anxiety. Again, feeling like there is a structure, even if it's imperfect, having a structure sometimes brings calm. In fact, we might think structures protect us. If we think about the world as a hostile world, those structures might feel like they protect us. For instance, if we band together with others we perceive to be like ourselves, maybe we will be safe together. These benefits, making sense of a complicated world, being productive for work, and protecting oneself, are really reasonable advantages to categorization that people value. The difficulty, however, is that such categorization of the other, as these books illuminate each in their own realm, racism, disease, international conflict, that kind of categorization risks much more deleterious effects. For instance, in making sense of the world, such categorization can lead to exclusion, or the pursuit of productivity and efficiency can lead to oppression, or, most apparent in all three books, efforts towards self-protection move inexorably towards dehumanization of the other, whether related to the origin of racist ideas, ancient and contemporary stigmatization of disease and people with disease, or current electoral politics and manipulation. The fundamental issues of our time are those that require collective action, seeing beyond oneself, being part of something bigger than ourselves. Think about our global climate emergency. Think about the era of pandemics, and I say era because COVID-19 may not be the last. Think about our persistent and lethal racism and the yawning global and national economic inequities. It's one thing to study and talk about these issues. It's quite another to start to prepare oneself to contribute to tackling these issues, reversing the trends we see where categorizing people and ideas leads not to sense-making, productivity, and protection, but rather to exclusion, oppression, and dehumanization. In some ways, although this is clearly not the year any of us would have wished for, we have an opportunity together on this campus. Let us use this year, not regret it as, oh, so much less than it could have been, but rather imagine and practice living in an interconnected, caring community, one that recognizes mutual interdependence and commits to putting we before me. To practice this sort of living, we need to be all in. We need leadership, and we need civic engagement. We need empathy. We need to recognize we are one human family from the same ancestor and with our destinies interlocked. This work is not easy, particularly for those of us raised in the United States, where so many have valued individualism and freedom over mutual interdependence. We will face challenges in the year ahead as we negotiate how individual decisions affect the overall health and safety of our entire community. Thus, as we are learning and trying to make sense of a complicated, dynamic, conflicting world that just seems to expand in front of us as we engage with new ideas, new people, let us be mindful of each other, relentlessly curious to understand more, open to accepting more, and empathic so as to truly connect more. We can do this. The COVID epidemic and national crises of racism and global warming have made it clear in tragic ways that we have no other choice. We are in this together. We have everything we need, and the future is open to us. This convocation tradition is the official opening of the academic year at Vassar. May this year be full of learning, growth, and togetherness for the good of all. Thank you so very much.
Thank you, President Bradley. I would like to invite Prashit Parikh, class of 2021, President of the Vassar Student Association, to address his fellow classmates. Prashit?
Thank you so much, Dean Alamo. Good afternoon, class of 2021, and welcome. My name is Prashit Parikh, and I'm going to be serving as the Vassar Student Association President for this upcoming 2020-2021 school year. First and foremost, I would like to welcome you to the beginning of our senior year. While this time is definitely not what many of us anticipated, I'm certain that we will still be able to make memories that will last us a lifetime. I'd like you to close your eyes and think about the first time you actually stepped onto Vassar's campus. What was the weather like? Who were you with? How were you feeling? Did you even know what a womp womp was? It's likely that all of these images and feelings will resurface as we begin commencement just a few months from now. As for this year, we'll be wrapping up what has been an exciting 4 years as a Vassar student. This includes sitting in the chapel during orientation week, eating too many pancakes and joss at midnight before the start of finals, and engaging with the community which has shaped each one of us very differently. Looking forward, we'll be searching for jobs at some of the top companies in the world, applying to graduate programs, and figuring out what life after Vassar will look like. All the while, we will be managing senior seminars, theses, and saying goodbye to a place we have called home for so long. I would like to share with you something I've heard multiple times throughout my time here at Vassar. This is the phrase human student leader. Through our time together on campus, we have undoubtedly learned to be better humans. Vassar is a place where diversity shines, and at the center of this is community. From comforting your peers in your room during times of difficulty to wearing a mask amidst a pandemic, we have put we before me time and time again. We've also learned to be better students. As you know, Vassar's curriculum is definitely no joke. It takes immense dedication, hard work, and perseverance in order to succeed at an institution which challenges its students the way Vassar College does. Finally, Vassar has shaped us into leaders, whether it be on house team, through student organizations, competing, performing, or in the classroom. We have all attained new leadership qualities which will help us undoubtedly in the future. Given that we are currently in the middle of a pandemic, it is no question that we will need leaders to positively impact the world moving forward. I'm certain that Vassar's class of 2021, us, will help with that change moving forward. Speaking of change, this year's ceremonies and celebrations will likely be different from years past. The VSA is currently working very hard to provide programming in a safe manner through which we will still be able to commemorate how hard we have worked and to get to this very moment. Additionally, we have an extremely apt senior class council who I'm certain will be able to navigate this unprecedented time and alter the traditional definition of senior activities in the best way possible. Ultimately, I'm excited to experience what this year has in store. Just think of the stories we'll be able to share at reunion and with our friends and families about having class outside, sitting on Noise Circle during lunch, and even attending classes online. One thing that's for sure is that we will need to learn and adapt as we move forward in this new setting. On that note, I would like to leave you with a quote by Angela Davis, which I believe clearly exemplifies the Vassar community. Davis said, I am no longer accepting the things I cannot change. I am changing the things I cannot accept. As you wrap up this year and enter the next phase of your lives, keep this sentiment in mind and continue to push the boundaries you can no longer accept. With this, I wish you the best of luck and hope for an amazing end to our journey here at Vassar College.
Thank you, Prashit, for those wonderful remarks. Next, I would like to introduce Steve Hankins, class of 1985, who is the president of the Alumni Association of Vassar College and who will bestow the Young Alumni Achievement Award. Steve?
Thank you, Dean Alamo, and good afternoon, everyone who is watching this convocation, whether you're watching from your dorm room on campus or much farther away. As part of the class of 1985, as the proud parent of graduates of the classes of 2013 and 2017, and as a member of a family whose many connections to Vassar date back to my great-grandmother, class of 1906, I want to extend a warm welcome to all of you and to two groups in particular. Class of 2024, you've just begun your Vassar careers under circumstances that none of us could have imagined a year ago. But those circumstances cannot and do not alter this simple fact: you are now part of the Vassar family. We are so excited to have you at Vassar and to have the opportunity to watch you as Vassar students for the next 4 years and as Vassar alumni after that. Class of 2021. As you are all too keenly aware, ordinarily we would be sitting in the chapel together and you would be wearing your caps and gowns for the first time as you begin your senior years. Even though we can't do that this year, you have a place of honor in this ceremony, because next May, you will become Vassar's newest graduates. And when that happens, you will join nearly 40,000 Vassar alumni and alumni worldwide. As president of the Alumni Association of Vassar College, better known as the AAVC, I look forward to welcoming you to our alumni ranks in May. Each year, the AAVC board selects a recent Vassar graduate to be presented with the AAVC Young Alumni Achievement Award, which is given to a graduate of the last 10 years for either extraordinary service to Vassar or for exceptional professional and personal achievements that have already had significant impact in their chosen field. This year's honoree has certainly had an extraordinary impact in his chosen field, a field that barely existed when he was writing his senior thesis at Vassar as a member of the class of 2012. Olaf Carlson Wee was born in Minnesota and grew up near that state's border with Fargo, North Dakota. As a sociology major at Vassar, he decided to write about an idea that at the time had not been the focus of very much research in academia: Bitcoin and cryptocurrency. He quickly garnered the attention of Silicon Valley and beyond, for his expertise and insight in the field of blockchain technologies and the cryptocurrency world. After graduation, Olaf joined the founders of Coinbase as the company's first employee, becoming head of risk and product manager. In 2016, he set off on his own to start one of the first cryptocurrency hedge funds, Polychain Capital, with $5 million in venture capital. Within 2 years, Polychain had over $1 billion in assets under management, becoming the first cryptocurrency fund to cross that threshold. Carlson Wee has not just been successful in his field, he created it. In naming him to its annual 40 Under 40 list of the most influential young people in business in 2018, Fortune magazine dubbed him a true crypto OG. The following year, the same publication referred to him as cryptocurrency's prince. Despite these labels, Carlson Wee prefers to use the term digital assets because he says people get it in their mind that Bitcoin is a cryptocurrency, that it was basically limited to money or currency. While that metaphor is perhaps useful to understand, it's ultimately not the full picture. To those who follow financial markets, it's no secret that Bitcoin has had its ups and downs, but the story is still being written. Just this June, the financial information platform The Tokenist discussed a survey conducted in the wake of the pandemic and the economic downturn. That publication noted this: the results are striking. We found increased knowledge of and growing confidence in Bitcoin among all age and gender groups surveyed. This effect was most pronounced in the millennial respondents, with 45% now preferentially investing in Bitcoin over stocks, real estate, and gold. And there are some who see cryptocurrency as a positive change agent in developing countries, where its unique properties hold the promise of improved financial inclusion to those without access to traditional banking, reduction of the cost of remittances sent back home, and better monitoring of how state funds are expended. Part of Vassar's heritage is the ability to visualize and create that which does not yet exist. Think of the idea that Matthew Vassar had creating a first-tier college for women in the mid-1800s on the eve of the Civil War. In recommending Carlson Wee for this award, members of the AAVC Board Alumni Recognition Committee wrote, "His early grasp of the importance of digital currency was brilliant, and his success at such a young age is testament to his creativity and unwavering determination. And also, it's that liberal arts mentality where there's versatility and creativity. You can talk about anything, you have a strong view of the world, it's not just one-dimensional, it's multifaceted." Carlson Wee himself has said he places the highest value on the friendships he made while at Vassar, and he offered the following advice to today's students: trust your intuition, do things for your own reasons, and don't let anyone tell you how to think or what to think. On behalf of the AAVC, I am honored and pleased to present this year's AAVC Young Alumni Achievement Award to Olaf Carlson Wee, Class of 2012. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve, and congratulations to Olaf Carlson Wee. We will now hear from Dean of the Faculty, William Hoynes, Professor of Sociology, who will announce the newly appointed faculty endowed chairs. Dean Hoynes.
Thank you, Dean Alamo. Good afternoon. I have the great pleasure of announcing 3 new appointments to faculty endowed chairs. An endowed chair, which funds a faculty position, is created by a financial gift to the college, often in a designated field of study or stage of career. It's typically named for either the donor or for someone being honored by the donor. Being named to an endowed chair is a significant honor because it recognizes the importance of the recipient's scholarly or creative work and his or her contributions to the college, including valuable campus leadership. The George Sherman Dickinson Chair in Music was established in the late 1950s to honor George Sherman Dickinson, who taught in the music department at Vassar from 1916 to 1953. Professor Dickinson contributed to the design of Skinner Hall, which opened in 1931, and he outfitted the building with advanced new media technology. Professor Dickinson served as music librarian at the college and as chair of the music department for 12 years. He was a widely published scholar who taught more than 6,000 students during his Vassar career. The Dickinson Chair is awarded to a distinguished faculty member in the music department. The George Sherman Dickinson Chair is awarded this year to Professor of Music John Chenette. Professor Chenette arrived at Vassar in 2008 and served as Dean of the Faculty until 2019. During that time, he also served one semester as acting president and 1 year as interim president. He's now a full-time faculty member in the music department. During his time as dean, Professor Chenette co-authored 6 major grants from the Andrew W. Mellon Foundation. In addition, he has addressed national conferences on innovative pedagogical practices. Professor Chenette is an internationally recognized composer, and he's the recipient of several prestigious grants and fellowships. Congratulations, Professor Chenette. Next is the Dante Antolini Chair in Italian. The Dante Antolini Chair was established in 1966 with a gift from Julia Coburn Antolini, Vassar class of 1918, in honor of her husband, Dante Antolini, who was originally from Florence, Italy. The endowed chair was intended to support the study of Italian language and literature at Vassar. In endowing this chair, Ms. Coburn Antolini recognized Vassar as the first women's college in the United States to include the study of Italian language and literature in its curriculum. The Dante Antolini Chair is awarded to a distinguished faculty member in the Italian department. This year, the recipient of the Dante Antolini Chair is Associate Professor of Italian Simona Bondavalli. Professor Bondavalli has been a faculty member in the Italian department since 2004. She currently serves as chair of the Italian department, and she has served as resident director of the Eastern College Consortium program in Bologna 3 times. Professor Bondavalli teaches courses on Italian language and literature, as well as food studies and contemporary cinema. Her many publications on Italian cinema and television include the 2015 book, Fictions of Youth, published by the University of Toronto Press. She's currently at work on a fascinating new project that links television studies and food studies, Broadcasting the Food Nation, Gastronomy and Democracy in 1950s Italian Television. Congratulations, Professor Bondavalli. And finally, the Mary Clark Rockefeller Assistant Professor Chair in Environmental Studies. The Mary Clark Rockefeller Chair was one of 2 pre-tenure chairs in environmental studies established in 2001, with a gift from Mary R. Morgan, Vassar class of 1960, in honor of her mother, Mary Clark Rockefeller. The 2 Mary Clark Rockefeller Assistant Professor Chairs, which rotate among junior faculty members who hold the chair during their assistant professor years, were created to provide sustaining support for the environmental studies program at Vassar. This year, the Mary Clark Rockefeller Chair is awarded to Zach Kofron, Assistant Professor of Anthropology and member of the Environmental Studies Program Steering Committee. Professor Kofron is a biological anthropologist who studies growth and development in humans and our close relatives, both living and extinct. He was instrumental to the creation of the new Biology and Culture Correlate Sequence, and he runs the Human Evolution and Development Lab and the Virtual Anthropology Lab, both of which give students hands-on opportunities to work with advanced digital tools in anthropological research. Professor Kofron is a highly regarded scholar who's published extensively on the evolution of the human brain. As a member of the Environmental Studies program, Professor Kofron teaches the first-year writing seminar, A Prehistoric Perspective on Climate Change. All 3 of these accomplished faculty members have distinguished themselves as teachers, scholars, and campus leaders who support students and the college itself in a variety of roles. I'm honored to recognize them here today. While this is a virtual convocation, so we're not gathered together in the chapel, I still invite the recipients to please rise in your home or office to accept our acknowledgement and appreciation. Thank you and congratulations.
It is now my great pleasure to welcome our convocation speaker, Professor Eileen Leonard. Professor Leonard is a professor of sociology and also serves on the steering committee of the American Studies program. She has directed the American Studies program as well as the Women's Studies program during her time at Vassar College. She received her PhD in sociology from Fordham University. Her teaching and research interests are in criminology, gender and social theory, and social problems. Her courses include Introduction to Sociology, Criminology, Working Class Studies, and Women, Crime, and Punishment. I had the distinct pleasure of co-teaching what is perhaps Professor Leonard's most popular course at the college, titled Gender, Social Problems, and Social Change, which is taught at a local women's prison to a combined class of Vassar students and incarcerated women. Please join me in welcoming Professor Eileen Leonard.
Okay, thank you, Dean Alamo, for your introduction, and thank you to President Bradley for the opportunity to speak here today. And good afternoon to all members of the Vassar community. Welcome to our fantastic seniors as you embark on your final year here at Vassar, and an especially warm welcome, class of 2024, as you begin your educational journey here. Today is a special day because it celebrates the beginning of a new academic year, albeit this year under extraordinary circumstances. But I believe this very turmoil we're experiencing may be read as an awakening to the trouble we're in, and that it presents us as an academic community with an obligation and an opportunity to be part of a new beginning. As I was preparing for this talk, I was thinking about my own educational path. I am entirely a product of Catholic schooling, 12 long years with teaching sisters and another 5 with the Jesuits. To this day, I blame them for every flaw in my character, but I am deeply grateful to them for 2 gifts. One is an awareness of the profound value of the liberal arts in enabling us to explore and integrate issues, ideas, and methods across the disciplines in the humanities, the arts, the natural and social sciences. This ideally provides the time and space to ask questions about ourselves and our world, to think critically, independently, and creatively. Another gift I received was an emphasis on the purpose of education, and that is as preparation for a meaningful life in service to the common good. I was taught that education is not for the status or glorification of an individual. It is not for personal gain. It is certainly not to secure a more favored place in the job market. Instead, at the deepest level, a liberal arts education can be a source of empowerment and a call to a more just and compassionate society and world. I'd like to illustrate how this understanding of the liberal arts and social justice has impacted my teaching and my research, much of which has centered on a sociological analysis of crime and the criminal justice system in the United States. The discipline of sociology teaches us that crime and criminals are socially constructed, meaning that there is not simply an inherent quality that makes something a crime or someone a criminal, nor are these categories objective or unchanging. Instead, the social context, social structures, and social values shape our understanding of what constitutes crime in profound ways. For example, if there is inequality in larger society, until it is rooted out, it will express itself explicitly as well as insidiously in the institutions of that society, including the criminal justice system. We are currently getting an education on the racism in the criminal justice system from the protesters in the street. This racism has always been part of the U.S. criminal justice system and in direct contrast to our stated ideals of equal justice for all, regardless of wealth, power, or social identity. In my work, I've aimed to illuminate intersecting forms of inequality by viewing crime and criminals through a comparative lens. I'll use drug violations as one example, but virtually any category of crime, theft or state crime or sexual assault, can be examined in the same comparative way with much the same results. The dominant narrative we're taught regarding crime and justice is that most of us are good people who lead law-abiding lives in a basically fair and just system. We're also taught negative conceptions of marginalized groups as those who commit serious crimes and are deemed individually responsible for their actions, silenced in terms of their lived experiences, and ultimately irredeemable. The only problem with this is what classical sociologist Max Weber refers to as inconvenient facts. That is, facts that challenge the dominant narrative and expose a far grimmer reality. Not simply of individual success or failings, but of a system laden with class, race, and gender discrimination. When we think about drug crimes, we typically focus on street crime. The emphasis is placed on illegal drugs, on drug addicts, and the gangs involved in the drug trade, then the imprisonment that frequently results. Now, this focus has significant value, but it keeps us trained on street crime and on particular groups, largely inner-city people of color, who are stereotyped and targeted as the drug offenders in our society. But a wider lens necessarily exposes significant power differentials that underlie the entire process of criminalization and provides empirical evidence of just how socially constructed and indeed how unjust it actually is. For example, the United States has waged a vigorous and utterly unsuccessful war on drugs for decades, but enforcement policies have targeted only certain users and dealers. These policies have had nothing short of a devastating effect on communities of color. We know that Black Americans are between 3 and 5 times as likely as white Americans to be arrested for drug violations, and they are 12 times more likely to be imprisoned for them. The war on drugs has been primarily a war on Black men, the Latinx community, and the poor, but also a war on women, and some women more than others, especially women of color. Now, we may delude ourselves into thinking, well, they're the ones who violate the drug laws. But the fact is that white people use and sell drugs at roughly the same rates as Black people. As legal scholars Maurer and Cole say, quote, police find drugs where they're looking for them, unquote, and they're looking in central cities, not white suburbs, college campuses, or on Wall Street. One way to illustrate the injustice of what's occurring is to expand our knowledge about those that sociologists Mohammed and Fitzwald have referred to as the anti-targets in the war on drugs. These sociologists did 6 years of fieldwork exploring illegal drug networks in several universities throughout Southern California. They found these college dealers, in their words, virtually immune to law enforcement. They were not all small-time dealers. Some were making profits of between $2,000 and $5,000 a week. But they viewed law enforcement as an inconvenience, not a real threat, and they were confident that if they got in trouble, their parents would come to the rescue. But in 6 years, not one of these students found themselves in trouble with the law. Now, this stands in stark contrast to how the war on drugs has played out in communities of color in terms of searches, arrests, and punishment. It has reinforced racial hierarchies through the punitive control of people of color, while white, middle-class people have been cast more as victims and largely insulated from the carceral state. Looking at various anti-targets exposes the fact that the way we define and punish a criminal is not rooted merely in actual behavior, but instead structured along the lines of race, gender, and class. Now, we can further expand the focus on drug offenses by considering the crimes of pharmaceutical corporations, which I'll mention very few criminologists actually do. But sociologist Edwin Sutherland insisted some 80 years ago that we mistakenly view most criminals as poor and minority, whereas this is immediately challenged if we examine corporate crime. Obviously, there are significant differences here, different causal factors, different dynamics, and very different outcomes in terms of arrests and punishment. But we claim to focus on drug crimes because of the harm that they do to individuals, to communities, and to society. Now, it's impossible to provide an adequate sketch of pharmaceutical crime here, so I'm just going to make a few introductory remarks and then provide a couple of examples to illustrate. The pharmaceutical industry is one of the largest and most profitable in the United States, and it has a notorious record in terms of public safety. The Journal of the American Medical Association, which is a premier journal in the field, named the drug industry as the third leading cause of unnatural death in the United States after only cancer and heart disease. Although we typically think of corporate crime as mainly financial and unintentional, the stunning fact is that it results in more than 100,000 American fatalities each year, and this is the result of deliberate violations. Virtually all the drug corporations have been involved in illegal activities. Most have done so repeatedly. The harm they do is extensive, and if they're called to account, they are generally treated leniently by any standard, but especially when compared to how we punish the marginalized among us. Here's one example that may be in the collective memory of some of us. It's from Merck Pharmaceuticals. Merck marketed a popular drug called Vioxx, which is a prescription painkiller for arthritis. They learned from their own clinical trials that this drug caused 6 times more heart attacks among those taking it compared to control groups. But their researchers and executives hid and misreported this evidence. Instead, they hired ghostwriters to draft deceptive articles about the safety and efficacy of Vioxx, and then paid medical doctors to lend their names to these articles. They sent 3,000 highly trained representatives to doctors' offices across the country with misleading information about the safety of Vioxx, and they prohibited these representatives from discussing any information to the contrary. By the time Merck was forced to admit the dangers of Vioxx and to pull it from the market, it's estimated that the drug had killed at least 60,000 Americans through heart attacks and strokes, a danger Merck was aware of from the beginning. The government fined Merck $950 million as a punishment for illegally misbranding Vioxx, but Merck had already exceeded $11 billion in sales of the drug. Merck also faced thousands of costly personal injury lawsuits, but significantly, the government didn't charge any Merck executives, researchers, or doctors with a crime. Instead, Merck pleaded guilty to a marketing violation and paid its fine. Yet those anti-targets were responsible for not 1, but 60,000 deaths. It's important to know that Merck is not an outlier, that this behavior is commonplace among pharmaceutical corporations, and the fines leveled against them rarely rise to the level of profits they've accrued from their violations. I'll briefly mention one more example. Undoubtedly, the most notorious case of utter disregard of public health is that of Purdue Pharma and its painkiller OxyContin. Purdue marketed and promoted OxyContin for chronic pain as a less addictive painkiller because of its time-release formula. They claimed that patients would not develop a tolerance to the drug, nor would they suffer withdrawal symptoms. However, their own clinical trials demonstrated that OxyContin was highly addictive and clearly resulted in withdrawal symptoms. In spite of this, Purdue engaged in a campaign of misinformation for 5 years to boost sales. According to the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, opioids, including OxyContin, killed more than 47,000 Americans in 2017 alone. Purdue is regarded as responsible for most of these deaths and for the opioid crisis generally. The human toll of Purdue's actions now represents one of the largest epidemics in history caused by medical treatment. A subsidiary of Purdue pleaded guilty to misbranding OxyContin and was fined $634 million, although they had already made billions in profits from the drug. This case is far from over, since Purdue has been and will be dealing with lawsuits from multiple states involving billions of dollars. But one significant factor is that no arrests or prison time have occurred so far for anyone involved. So admittedly, we have a serious problem with drug violations in the United States, and many people are harmed because of this. But rather than a fair, balanced, and effective approach to drugs and drug policy, we dehumanize and severely punish certain portions of our population while minimizing similar and even more lethal transgressions of others. In the process, we fail to protect people from the whole range of drug problems. Now, the point here is not to demonize the pharmaceutical industry, nor to valorize or justify street crime. People engage in predatory and destructive behavior that must be addressed. But the crisis we face is not just about crime and punishment. Instead, our patterns of crime and punishment reflect and reinforce the much deeper problems of social, political, and economic inequalities. These deeper problems will not be solved by the criminal justice system. We cannot punish our way to a better society. And this is precisely where a social justice perspective enters. The struggle for social justice is essentially a struggle for human rights. It means moving beyond the criminal justice system to address social and economic factors that cause crime, all forms of crime in the first place. It means addressing inequalities in employment, housing, healthcare, education, and ultimately predatory capitalism. These conditions are not only viewed as unacceptable, but also as the result of human-made structural violence. Finally, social justice is not about reforming people so they can fit back into a fundamentally unfair system. Instead, it's about people working together to challenge injustice and in the process transforming themselves as well as their local and global world. The task before us is obviously immense and imperative. It is particularly important to think clearly and critically about issues of criminal justice at this moment in American history, when the current administration is weaponizing a familiar law and order platform to regain election. This campaign is intended to be divisive and to stoke fear and racism against marginalized groups, as well as against those fighting for a more equitable system, all under the banner of fighting crime and dangerous criminals. Let me mention that meanwhile, under the same administration, prosecutions of corporate violations have declined by almost 50%. So to conclude, by now it's commonplace to say we live in difficult and I would argue dangerous times. We also live in a society and a world that was hurting and deeply wounded before this moment. The COVID pandemic, the protests against police violence, and challenges to democracy here and abroad are exposing once again profound and long-standing inequalities and injustice. But perhaps this offers us the possibility of change and even transformation. My hope for all Vassar students, and specifically today for the newest members of our community, the class of 2024, is that your experience at Vassar does all that a liberal arts education is capable of doing. It is meant to be about transformation. It is meant to affect us deeply. It is also meant to be a space, I would say a sacred space, where we can come together as a community of learners and reach beyond the social boundaries and inequalities that imprison all of us. Education certainly takes place in many locations. It's going on now in multiple grassroots organizations and in the streets, but it's my hope, no, I would say it's my faith, that the education that you receive here at Vassar can equip you with the knowledge and understanding and the critical skills to take your place among those who in so many ways are confronting the world's suffering in an enduring struggle for social justice. And I wish you the very best on this challenging and lifelong journey. Thank you so much for your attention.
Thank you, Professor Leonard. At this time, I will now ask Reverend Spears to close out our program.
And now, beloved people, in an unsettled and unsettling time, and many unknowns, we begin anew this shared calling to the liberating arts. May we give ourselves to this way of learning, as Professor Leonard so forcefully describes, that the liberal arts may do what they're meant to do, to transform us, to affect us deeply. So may we indeed learn to read the turmoil we're in as an awakening to the trouble we've long been in. Feeling this and seeing it, may we take our place humbly, boldly, among those confronting the world's wounds and imagining new, just, joyful ways of being together as a beloved community on one small planet. Beloved people, we begin again this lifelong work.